Hello friends, this is Lost Worm and you're watching The Worm's Turn, my channel where I play games, maybe review them. You may notice, the more observant among you may notice that in this video, my voice does not match the movement of my mouth. That is because I am an idiot and I did not turn my microphone on during this recording session. So what I'm doing is...
Where's the king? Why'd he leave us a black-clad mercy?
For the first time...
Took everything. I'd head to the wood, but my fear of the Scoia'tael.
For the first time, I'm using Audacity. So that in itself, and doing a voiceover. So that in itself is probably going to cause some of its own problems for this video. I got no idea what I was saying. It was so long ago. I have, since to prevent this problem from happening again, I have created a checklist. So that's one way in which hopefully this channel will be improving. I have a list here of things that I've been doing throughout to kind of improve the quality of the channel. As I stated when I first started this, I've only recently started uploading videos, so there are a lot of...
ears caught the sound of a ruckus coming from the camp.
Thieves! Inglet! A pox upon you all!
It was her quartermaster hurling oaths at the peasants she had freed from the Nilfgaardian slave convoy. A few had stolen supplies under the cover of darkness and escaped into the woods. Terror and dread gripped the other freed prisoners. Meve mulled over what to do with them, and Reynard, as always, offered some advice.
"'Tis high time they went off on their own, your grace. They are too great a hindrance. They slow our march, divert our soldiers from more important tasks. And now this."
Gascon was listening to their conversation. Meve shot him a questioning look.
I opposed taking them in. So, for consistency, I now oppose forcing them to leave. We made their miserable lives our responsibility, did we not? Well then, that is a burden we cannot simply shrug off.
I'm apparently explaining my rationale behind my decision, I think. I don't know what it was at the time.
Let us not mince words. We cast off these peasants now, they shall die.
Meve said in the end.
Let them stay. But I want them watched. They cause any more trouble, military justice they shall face. Understood?
The freed prisoners sighed with relief. The infantrymen assigned to watch over them, however, grumbled their disapproval of the Queen's decision.
"'Tis an army, not a shelter,"
they said. Meve's ears surely caught the complaint. But the Queen had never let the opinions of others guide her in such matters, trusting only her own judgment.
Yeah, so the channel's got a lot to be desired in terms of quality improvements. At this point, now that I'm recording the audio, I've actually completed the game entirely, so if I have time, I'll probably talk a bit about my impressions of the game. So,
not liking the looks
other
of
things
this.
have been...
Gascon said, furrowing his brow. Meve followed his gaze. Before them, beside the road, stood a hut with a scorched thatch roof.
Why?
Huts abandoned, yet dried fruit and mushrooms hang from the eaves. Famine raging all around and no one's been tempted. I'd send a scout if I were you.
The Queen did as Gascon suggested, and sent 3 infantrymen to reconnoiter. They entered the hut and found only silence, that was soon broken by a blood-curdling growl. The soldiers ran out at full speed, tripping over their own legs. Meve drew her sword, convinced a horde of Knickers or ghouls would soon attack. But her fears proved unfounded. Instead of monsters, out of the hut came a shaggy dog, a torn scrap of fabric clutched in its teeth.
"Milady,"
one of the soldiers began, his face red with embarrassment and his hands covering a hole in his breeches.
"was dark as a well inside, and that hound, it jumped out at us, all of a sudden biting it and snapping."
Bad boy,
Gascon said with a smile, then pulled a hunk of dried sausage from his bag. Bought by this generous offering, the dog calmed down at once. Further examination showed the dog was the hut's only resident. Like many others in Eldain, its owners had disappeared without a trace. Their loyal mutt still guarded the premises, waiting for his master's return.
Let's take him with us.
Gascon said.
Otherwise, he'll die here, of his own hunger or someone else's.
A watchful sentry like this could prove useful in our camp.
Said the Queen.
Fine, he can join. But he shall need a name.
How about Reynard?
Proposed Gascon, a cheeky grin smeared across his face.
That way, he'll come when you call, sit on command, and always be a heel. Always heel, that is.
Watch your words,
said Reynard, hand tightly gripping the hilt of his sword.
or you'll learn I'm not at all as tame as you believe.
Enough, both of you. That's an order. As for you...
The Queen took a good look at the dog, who still had a scrap of fabric in his teeth.
Since it seems you've a taste for the cloth of the nether regions, I dub you... Knickers. Will that do?
The dog wagged its tail vigorously, as if thoroughly pleased with its new name. Meve's company marched off, a furry new recruit richer.
Where was I? Okay, so yeah, compared to when I first started making these videos, one of the things I've started doing is I started cutting segments from the videos. Oh, I should read these. So Knickers, 7 power, immune. Means he can't be targeted. Permanent resilience means he stays on the battlefield between rounds. When you play a gold card, he's summoned immediately from your deck and placed on the battlefield. And the unit may raid your hand for yummy treats. So I don't know what the trigger is, if it's random. And it took me a while to figure it out. But if you have something edible in your hand, Knickers will eat it and boost his power. I don't know if he boosts his power based on the effect of that card. I know that during the game he'll eat my Lyrian Merlot a lot, which boosts your lowest unit by the power of your highest unit, if I remember correctly. But yeah, there are several times when I'm just baffled as to why Knickers is suddenly 25 power and my hand size is 1 lower than it used to be. So what you just saw there, the frame rate dropped on the video. In game, I had absolutely no frame rate drops, and I realized a little bit later that there was it was the recording software that was causing the issue. So there's going to be a section later in the game where there's a lot of fire, and it just kills my frame rate. So unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. Same with that, there's nothing I can do about having missed recording my microphone audio in this recording session, because the game uses checkpoints, so I can't reload, and it overrides your previous save, so I can't go back and redo the section. Why I'm going back redoing the section would matter for the frame rate drop is because there was a setting in my recording software, I'm using OBS, that I think it was making the software do the rendering, not the rendering, the rendering of the recording, but I changed it to the hardware and it got smooth after that. There's no problems after that. So I'll do my crappy voiceover thing, reading the text now. In the fog. In order to evade Nilfgaardian patrols, Meve veered from the main road. This tower, however, presented other dangers. The Lyrians lost their way riding through a mist-draped forest. Following a narrow, overgrown path, they stumbled upon a ruined homestead. It appeared abandoned, yet appearances can be deceiving. Eliminate the ancient foglet and do not let Meve die. It's a shortened battle, something that... and it's a puzzle. Well, every puzzle is a shortened battle. Since this is a good segue for it, I guess I'll talk a bit about my impressions of the puzzles in the game. Or should I do that all in one section? I think I'll do it right now. Ancient Foglet. On turn start, spawn 2 Foglets. Palisade. Immobile, so it can't be moved, and it has permanent resilience. Lasts between rounds. Both irrelevant. Doomed. That means that it doesn't go into the graveyard. It's just removed from the game. I think, if I remember right. So I've got... He's got no ability. The leader has no ability. Lyran had Juke. When you deploy it, you give 1 charge to the card on your right. The Vogenberg, we're all familiar with by now, I think. Slinger, Stray Slinger, when you deploy him, move 3 cards to another row, and if they were units, you damage them by 2. Stray's Bomber, set a row on fire. Rivian Sappers, when they're deployed, damage the unit by 2. If it was destroyed, repeat this ability. The Stray's Bomber, when you set a row on fire, it just kind of has a... I think it's... I can't remember. It has this percentage chance of doing 2 damage to anybody on the row at the end of... Is it the beginning of the enemy turn? I think it's the beginning of the enemy turn. It might be the end, though. So I played the Vogenberg there. Generally, I want to get the Vogenberg down as fast as possible, because the earlier I get it down, the more armor it can accumulate, which is the basis for the damage it does using its command ability. Its command ability spends its charge and does damage and causes it to lose all of its armor and does damage to an enemy row equal to the amount of armor it just lost. So the earlier you get it down, the more units you put beside in the same row as it to add more armor. I'm playing my Stray's Bomber early as well, so that I can
This could
because it
hurt.
does damage over time. So the earlier I get that down, the faster, the more effect it will have overall throughout the battle. I'm not sure that I chose the right row to put it on, based on what I'm looking at. I mean, I think it would make more sense to have put it on the back row, but I don't know. I guess I'll find out. It's a little different when you can review the cards and you're actually playing the game. Oh yeah, I make a ton of mistakes when I'm playing the game. Things get kind of better as I play the game, which, you know, is to be expected whenever you're playing a game. So, yeah, there's a lot of times when I try to become more aware of this as I play the game. But there's a lot of times where I'll just kind of sit around and think about my cards, look at my cards. I won't even be moving my cursor, I'll just be staring at the screen, and it's kind of a little weird. But I try to be more conscious of that now, so I try to spend less time thinking when I'm recording. And also, I don't mean thinking, I mean just thinking and doing nothing else. It's very intense in my head, but nobody can see the intensity inside my head. You can only see what's happening on screen. Oh, I guess the Ancient Foglet takes damage every time one of his spawns die, and that's why I put the fire there. Okay. So... So yeah, when I'm sitting there just thinking, I've started editing that out, like just cutting the clip that section of the video entirely, and just so it'll look a little weird, because sometimes see how the screen's got, like, at the bottom of the screen there's little sparks and the blue glowiness, and some of the cards and the fire's animated, and some of the cards are animated. So sometimes you'll notice, like, it kind of skips. That's because I cut something that's sitting there for a long time, thinking about my actions. The then sometimes this forest belongs to the Enshade. Leave this place at once, cursed Dwan, as you shall remain here for all eternity. Or you shall remain here, whatever. I'm prone to misreading things to first try. Also something I've noticed. But I've watched some other people doing videos, and I've noticed they do the same thing. The only difference is they don't stop and go back and reread it, which is actually probably a bad habit on my part. It interrupts the flow of what I'm reading. Sections.
Meve and her companions neared the Moulderwood, a dense, ancient forest of trees whose tangled branches had witnessed the conjunction of the spheres. It was not until King Vidamont's day that a road was finally carved through the primeval thicket, significantly shortening the journey from Rossburg to Aldersburg.
Even when peace reigns, danger rules this road.
Rayla said.
Now no one dares travel it.
At the edge of the wood by the road stood an enormous willow. Its branches swept down to cover its trunk, looking for all the world like long tresses shrouding a woman's face. Meve had an ill premonition. She did not like the sickly sweet aroma wafting from this tree, nor the metallic buzzing of insect wings. She sent a scout to investigate. He drew aside the drooping branches and stumbled back. There were men bound to the tree, covered in sap oozing from gashes in its trunk. Its heavy scent had attracted swarms of insects, flies, wasps, bees and beetles. They seethed over the bound men, crawling in and out of their ears and nostrils.
Eldain welcomes us to his wood,
Rayla whispered. Meve stepped towards the tree and saw the men stuck to it were all still alive. Those the elves had caught recently writhed and howled for rescue. Those hanging longer merely followed the queen with half-crazed, bloodshot eyes.
Well? Are you to stand there all day?
Meve screamed to her dumbstruck Lyrians.
Free them! At once!
Her soldiers needed no more prompting and set about sawing at the ropes with their blades. As soon as they had freed the first captive, before even a word of thanks could be uttered, a flaming streak soared through the air and stuck in the tree. The oozing resin burst into flames, engulfing the prisoners as well as the soldiers who had come to their aid. Elder speech battle cries rang out from the woods as elven warriors launched their attack.
It's a trap!
Cried Reynard.
Defend the queen!
So at that, I knew it was going to be a trap, but I just couldn't let them suffer. Eldain's ambush. The Lyrians fought in a veritable inferno, choking and drowning in a sea of crimson smoke, surrounded by the horrific screams of men whose skin had begun to melt and warp. The ambushing elves appeared as specters, black paint streaked across their faces, eyes smoldering with their virulent hatred for humankind. It's a shortened battle. We'll see whether or not I forget that. Apparently, I'm getting my phone. It's probably my alarm going off. So, there's some point where I was complaining about not being able to see the cards that were in the field while I'm selecting my cards. I realized later in the game that, and I probably already seen it earlier at this point and used it, but forgot about it. But there's the hide cards button, so it lets you hide the cards that you're choosing to redraw and take a look at the field before you actually do the redrawing. Eventually, I actually started taking advantage of that feature. It was pretty stellar improvement on my part. Speaking of improvements, another thing I was doing in editing to improve
keep your heads in the fight!
Is
They'll seek to blind us with shock and awe!
For a while when I was retreading, I was doing just cutting the areas where I was retreading, and it was too jumpy. I didn't like it kind of lost cohesion, I guess. So I started instead speeding it up by 300%. So, well, not by 300%, to 300%. By 300% would be what? At 400%? Be 400% speed? Let's see. So, sometimes you'll get to hear me making some chipmunk voices as a result of that. Okay, damage the unit by 2. If it is already boosted, damage it by 6 instead. That ability was really messing me up because of my Lyrian Scytheman being boosted. Look, it's Knickers! My first time with Knickers. Look how excited I am. He's such a good boy.
None shall tread on us!
So,
Kill them! Kill them all!
I do, whenever a non-elf unit is destroyed, boost this unit by 2. I do swear quite a bit while I'm recording. Not a lot, really, but in an effort to keep things within YouTube's policies, I've been trying to cut that out. When I do it, I just mute the audio for that section. Also, there's some mornings, I've talked about this a little bit. So we got another unit that boosts boosts the enemy's units when non-elf units are destroyed. There's a lot of fire on this battlefield. It is an inferno. Yeah, so at one point I got a lung infection called pulmonary blastomycosis. It's a fungal infection of the lung that you can get in certain areas of North America. Since that time, I am more prone to becoming congested than I used to be. So, especially in the mornings or when I first wake up. So sometimes I'm snorting a lot when I'm doing the recording, which is just gross. I have muted that in one of my recordings. I muted that a little bit. Unfortunately, it does cut out the audio a little bit. I'll just try to be more aware of that. Maybe walk away from my microphone if I'm really congested and, you know, try to clear things out away from the microphone. Speaking of cutting out the music, the weird thing about just like cutting out sections of video where I'm thinking is it almost never seems to have it never seems unnatural with the music, which is, I don't know, just an interesting observation. Like, it never seems like the music just is jumping to a random spot. There's still a good flow or cohesion in the music. I wonder if that's kind of a universal property to music. But I'm not a musician, so I don't know. So here's an example of me not really doing anything, just kind of staring at the screen. This is actually a lot less pronounced than what I had been doing in my earlier videos. It may... I don't know how much, if it's really improved in all of my videos, but I was trying to be more conscious of it. And it also just came about naturally that my time thinking... I was taking less time thinking just because I knew the cards better. And I knew what I was doing. I guess I should probably be reading the abilities of the cards.
Everything all right?
But I'm looking at my desk because I think better when I'm not looking at anything, which is another reason. Another good transition coming up here. It's another reason that another thing I need to improve on is speaking my thoughts more while I'm playing the game, because a lot of the time I'm just silently sitting there. And part of the reason is because a lot of my thought power is being taken up by actually playing the game, so I'm not speaking. Additionally, when I'm visually stimulated, it's harder for me to speak, which I obviously am while I'm playing a game.
Have strength, my love.
It's not hard for me to speak, it's hard for me to say anything meaningful. I mean, I could just jabber out random nonsense, I guess. So Ache, I had predicted, was not going to be a very useful card. Turns out he's actually pretty amazing.
Our codex commands it.
Especially when you're fighting Scoia'tael, because he do so much damage. So I was improving on speaking my thoughts more while I was recording, especially compared to how I was doing during the beginning. There's a certain point where I got into a really good flow of in the game, though. Like, I just kind of knew exactly what I was doing, and at that point I just started doing things without thinking about it, and at that point I just stopped talking to the audience again, which is kind of sucky.
There's been a mistake. I'm no mage.
Yeah, reduce lag. Oh, yeah.
Greetings.
So in the future, what I might do
What
is
is
while
it?
I'm doing my editing, I might take notes of like sections that are I think are particularly entertaining. I don't know. Sometimes I judge what I'm doing as entertaining even when an observer wouldn't. Objective observer probably not. But yeah, while I'm editing, I'm probably gonna like record timestamps and videos where I'm doing the more entertaining stuff, and then I can do like a best of sort of compilation that's just like the best of Worm's Turn, the best of Thronebreaker, and probably be more condensed experience in terms of entertainment. It wouldn't obviously let people see the entire game like watching my playthrough would.
Don't let them regroup! Finish off the wounded!
The battle done, Meve surveyed the carnage, her breath still ragged. The thick stench of blood, sap, and ash she sucked in made her stomach churn and head swoon.
The Scoia'tael. I'd heard of their cruelty, but...
The Queen said, sheathing her sword.
But never have I countenanced a thing like this.
Black Rayla, who had just extracted her blade from between an elven gorilla's ribs, smiled darkly.
Worst is yet to come, my lady.
The Queen regrouped her forces and marched into the Moulderwood. The Lyrians sang none of their usual marching songs. Instead, they walked in silence, eyes darting constantly to their flanks.
You still think about doing a stream at some point?
Nightingales. Unmindful of war, they sing on.
Those are no birds, my lady. Just Scoia'tael scouts use animal cries to communicate. Tell the men to hold to the road, my lady. Anyone wanders in the trees, they don't come out.
Problem with that is my work schedule is not regular in any way whatsoever. I work as relief, which, if you are not aware, means that I am called upon whenever somebody else can't make it into work. So it just makes it very hard to set a regularly scheduled stream, which is generally recommended for streaming from what I've read online, because it helps you build your audience. I still may do a stream here and there. I think I would have an easier time with it because having the audience would let me rebound, have a bit of a back and forth. It would stimulate me to actually engage with the audience. Abandoned camp. The presence of wind-tossed tents suggested others had visited the Moulderwood not long past. Yet why had they deserted their camp? What had become of them? Before the Lyrian scouts had a moment to investigate, they were surrounded by the sounds of slackened bowstrings and whistling arrows. Shortened battle. There's one battle that I play where I forget it's a shortened battle, and I pass my turn before I've played all my cards. And yeah, it was my shining moment. Another shining moment of idiocy. Shine on, lost worm. Digging holes ever deeper. Voices. Yes, stream. Do you have anything more to say about the stream? I'm reading down my list here. Oh yeah. I mean, some people in real life think I'm pretty clever, so that doesn't really come out when I'm just playing a game. It requires a little bit of, somebody to interact with or have a conversation with. I don't want Knickers in my hand because he comes into my hand automatically when I play a gold card. Not in my hand, onto the field automatically when I play a gold card. So, yeah, best not waste that slot. Okay. Voices. Yes, I like to do voices when I'm reading my text out loud. Sometimes it's not very good, but I think that that's probably also entertaining, even if my voices aren't good. It's probably funny to watch me do a crappy job. I feel like I do improve on them as I played the game, just because I think I was getting a little bit more comfortable with everything, so I was a little bit
Slaughter them to a man!
But I will continue to do voices in the games that I'll be recording, so you can continue to laugh at me. I have... in terms of the types of games that I am going to put on the channel, it's mostly going to be these types of games. Like, I used to play all sorts of games, but there are so many games coming out these days, and I'm pretty busy, but not as busy as I used to be when I was in university.
I was hoping
there's
you'd
so
say
many games coming out these days that I can only, if I want to play the games I really want to play, I have to only play the games I really want to play. It used to be that, you know, I'd beat a game that I really want to play, and then I'd have some time between games to play the first-person shooter, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I'll play them now and then. Now I don't really have time for that. There's too many strategy games, role-playing games for me to play. Those are primarily the types of games I'll play on this channel. So, there will be some exceptions. I do plan to play the Dishonored series, which has role-playing game elements, in terms at least of... maybe. I'm not actually 100% sure about that. Deus Ex, for example, I plan to play that series. I have played the first game, but that was a long time ago. So I'm probably going to play it. I remember the graphics, even at the time, weren't very good, so it's probably going to be a little bit jarring. Oh man, is this that battle where I get my butt beat bad? See, that was alliteration.
Ever have a stone knock out one of your
Is that alliteration? I remember reading some time ago that alliterations didn't quite mean what I thought they meant. Not what I was taught in high school. Or what I learned in high school. Maybe that's not what I was taught in high school. Maybe that's just what I learned in high school. Big difference between what you're taught and what you learn. Next game, voices... Okay, but the next game I'll be recording is actually going to be Pillars of Eternity 2. And I explained at the end of, I think, the last episode of this series that the reason for that is... I've already played Pillars of Eternity 1, and I like to try to play games within a franchise. This goes for when I'm reading books, too, or a series. In close proximity to each other. Close temporal proximity to each other. Because that way I don't forget what's going on, and I can be more engaged in the setting and story. I mean, it's already been a long time since I played Pillars of Eternity, so might not. I might have forgotten a lot of stuff anyway. I definitely have. Probably tell what's going on here. Need to pay more attention to what's going on the battlefield this time. Like I said, doing a voiceover is going to introduce its own problems. Every time I add something new, it's going to have its own problem until I improve upon that. It's like meta improvement. Improving upon improvement. Alchemist. I think when I first started using the Alchemist, I'd always get confused about how it worked. I'm pretty sure I'm going to sit up here. Oh! Nope. Knickers, why aren't you eating the Merlot?
You'll regret your mum ever squirted you out.
Oh, did I want you to yet? You have 1 armor to each allied unit. Cooldown 1. Desmond order. Alright. Then the leader can damage an enemy by 5, it looked like. And adjacent units by 2, I think. So set a unit's power. See, I'm gonna mess it up here.
Greetings.
I'm gonna put it down. And I'm going to have to... Well, yeah. I decreased the power of my 7 slinger to the power of my 3 slinger. What I should have done is I should have actually played it on... I don't know what it's called, but on the melee row of the enemy side, there's the elf guy on a horse. I should have used my alchemist on it. Nope. Nope, that's backwards. See, I did it again. No. Yeah, that's backwards. Anyway, I got better at it later.
Ha! Ha!
Blue Mountain Elite. Lock an enemy unit. Death Wish. Remove the enemy lock. So who's locked? My slinger. It doesn't matter. Black Rayla. I think I'm going to lose this battle. Based on what I'm seeing right now. Order. Play. Copy of any card. I know that there's...
Death to Old One!
I struggle against a Scoia'tael for a while. I make some modifications to my deck as a result, and then I no longer struggle, and in fact, every battle well, not every battle, almost every battle becomes a cakewalk at that point, which is something that I had to say about the game, actually. I really did enjoy the game. It's pretty much right up my alley. It was turn-based sort of strategy game. It had customization elements and that I could build my own deck. It had choices in the story that allowed me to have narrative consequences. So it pretty much had everything I want. I like the art style. I love the animated cards. I find the static cards, the art's good, but I don't know. There's something... It doesn't have a lot of character, I guess. I don't know what to say about it. But the animated cards are just amazing.
If anyone asks, you've not seen me.
Okay, it's not. I don't win. So I really enjoyed the game, but there's a certain point in the game in which I found a deck that worked, and then there was basically no need for me to make any modifications. And the game became kind of a breeze at that point, and I was just kind of going through the motions. It would have been nice if the challenge escalated a little bit better. I think I'm gonna cut this out. That's clearly just looking at my phone. If the battles escalated a little bit better, or the game forced you to switch the core of your deck periodically, kind of like at the end of Chapter 1, I was forced to switch to a Strays-based deck for temporarily. It'd be nice if there were some more changes between different factions. I don't want to spoil anything in case you haven't played the game before, but in Chapter 3, every chapter you're in a new region, and every region kind of has its own faction in the area, so it'd be cool if they had kind of forced your core of your deck to be related to that faction while you're there, to force you to adjust your gameplay in each section. So on that front, there were still some battles that were difficult, and actually there was one that, with the way I had set up my deck, it was literally impossible. It was a boss battle, so I actually said impossible. It was impossible for me to win. I don't want to say why exactly. Well, I'll say why. I won't say which battle it is. But my trophy, I can't remember if I have that trophy set to that trophy at this point, but the Manticore head does damage to enemies as they come onto the field. It does 1 or 2 damage each time. Prayer interrupted. Located at crossroads, shrines of Melitele were meant to protect travelers from evil. Yet, when Queen Meve approached one to pray, her force suddenly came under fire, victims of an ambush. Sometimes, irony stings. Reduce the power of all enemy archers to 1. Do not let me die. Puzzle. What's I saying? Oh yeah. Basically, every time some units died, it would remove 2 cards from my hand. So, what happened in the battle was a bunch of enemies would spawn, my Manticore head would immediately kill them, and my hand size would shrink. And then more enemies would spawn, my Manticore head would immediately kill them, and my hand size would shrink. That's a big deal, because your hand size not only... Elven Rogue, whenever this unit's power changes... I don't know what it said. Damage me by 1. Immune. Can't be targeted. Choose a bronze ally on the battlefield or in hand and add 2 copies of it to your deck. Choose an ally and place all copies of it from your deck. Becker's Dark Mirror. Damage the highest unit on the battlefield by up to 15, then boost the lowest unit by the amount damaged. And draw and play 2 Blitz units from your deck. In the deck, I only have Lyrian Arbalists, which when deployed do damage equal to the number of units on their row, including themselves. So basically, hand size is very important, because not only is it the number of turns in which you have to play the game, which is in itself very important because the more turns you have, the more chances you have to respond to your opponent's actions. It also, the more turns you have, the more chances your cards have to trigger on their turn. Actually, I don't know if that's true in Thronebreaker. It might only be in Gwent. I did start playing Gwent despite what I said I would do. I've been playing, yeah, I've been playing Gwent, the multiplayer game, and I've only barely been playing it enough to get my first daily rewards. No, so I played that to buff Meve up because I knew she was going to take damage from the units whenever their power changes. Yeah, and it's been going pretty good. I'd like to say it's because I'm an amazing strategist, and I am a prodigy at Gwent, but the reality is I've played this game, and it gave me a whole lot of reward points and cards for the multiplayer game, and I've kind of just been raffle stomping all over everybody I've played against so far at the lowest tiers of the game. Oh look, I failed. Well, that's pretty typical of me for a puzzle. So, speaking of... Oh yeah, I'm still talking about my impossible battle. So yeah, I already mentioned one tactical advantage of having a larger hand size. The other one is, of course, each card is how you contribute power to the battlefield and win the game. So that's the... Yeah, basically I ended my second turn with 3 cards left in my hand, or maybe it was less, and I did something I could really do. So I actually had to load a checkpoint and remove my Manticore head. It was just the Manticore head that was causing the problem. It was kind of ridiculous. So what am I doing here? I'm playing Royal Decree to play my Illyrian Arbalists. Why? Oh, I think I know. So I think I'm going to play Illyrian Arbalists to kind of damage the enemy units. What are you doing? Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Choose a different one. Choose a different one. Yes. Good Lost Worm. Good boy. You're doing it right. Stop thinking about it. No, 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 no. Nope. Well, maybe I'm right. We'll see. Yeah, play the Artusia Adept. These guys are amazing, by the way. They're ridiculous. They
Lady Margarita
are
told
like
us
the
of this.
power combo card of the game, which I discover later. Okay, play it. All right, let's see if you messed up. You messed up. Yeah. Yeah, messed up, Lost Worm.
Give me a target.
You have to get all units to 1. How are you going to do that now? You're going to do too much damage. Oh wait, I'm going to put them on the next row. Oh, nope. It worked. It worked out, guys. Past me was on the ball. Past me is not the same me as present me. And future me isn't the same as present or past me. Okay. I got Becker's Dark Mirror. I'm gonna go check it out. Damage the highest unit on the battlefield by up to 15, then boost the lowest unit by the amount damaged. So, I was talking about frame rate drops. That was another frame rate drop. Because there are too many animated cards on the screen. So, changing it so that my hardware rendered, changing the settings in OBS so it was rendered by hardware rather than software, just got rid of all those problems. Live and learn. Like I said at the beginning, I just kind of want to jump into it and try to improve as I go. Otherwise, you don't get started on things. And alright, so speaking, since we just did a puzzle, I'll talk about my feeling on the puzzles. The puzzle's difficulty varied by a wide margin. There are some that I could not figure out at all, or it took me several attempts. There's one where well, people were complaining about it. I had to look up the solution for it. People were complaining about it in the comments of the YouTube video I watched for the solution. So it wasn't just me. Other than that one, I was able to solve most of the puzzles on my own, although often it would take a few attempts. Often because I had some sort of misunderstanding of card, either because of my own inability to interpret the information or because the description of the card was a little vague. I felt some of the puzzles were good and I got derived satisfaction from solving them, but there were also a lot of puzzles where I felt their solution was almost self-evident. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe they weren't that obvious, but they could have just as well not been in the game. I think my video just ended, so I'm probably gonna have to cut stuff. Just give me a second, I'm gonna pause. Alright, so since you're stuck with me anyway, the video is over. I'm just gonna finish this up quickly. I would have liked if there were more card variety and more ability to develop your camp in the game. I didn't actually develop my deck much until I had finished developing my camp, so that did take away a lot from the deck building aspect of the game until towards the end. I would have liked more card variety, which could have been achieved through the same thing that I spoke of earlier, where each chapter changed the core of your deck, which would have forced a little bit. It would have provided more cards and would have forced you to change your gameplay up a bit. Battles were fun, but got a little easy. That's really all I have to say about the game. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I would recommend present self would recommend it to past self for sure. So anyway, thanks for watching. My name's Lost Worm. This is Worm's turn. My voiceover recording from my horrible mess up. And hopefully, despite this error, you'd be willing to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and see you guys next time.